All right, so
Well, thank you so much for the presentation, and I'm really happy. This is my first conference. And yes, you mentioned I live in the US, but currently I'm in Uruguay, South America, small country. I was born here, and I'm currently living the whole pandemic from my past home. But I'm happy to be able to share one of the topics that I'm really passionate about, which is performance testing, and now I'm focusing on mobile performance in my talk today. So first, before I actually start, let me get my map. I'm gonna do a quick introduction about who I am, tell you a bit about myself. So yeah, I already said I'm originally from Uruguay. I was born in Montevideo, which is the capital city, and I actually started my professional career in the software testing field, focusing on performance testing, mostly back-end type of stuff. And I'm a computer engineer, and besides being the co-founder and CEO of Apptim, I'm also an executive director at Abstracta. Abstracta is a software consulting firm with more than 11 years of experience, and we have a lot of clients around the world. We help them with all their performance problems. And I actually moved to San Francisco, California 3 years ago with Abstracta to expand our footprint there. And that's where we saw there was a need for mobile performance, not something that many people is aware of, and that's how my new startup Apptim started. And when I'm actually working at the startup, I like to do kite surfing, cooking plant-based and vegan, which is very weird for Uruguay because we have a lot of cows. And I also really like and I enjoy supporting projects that promote participation of women in IT. So if there's any women today joining us in the audience, I cheer for you, and I hope to see more women in our field. I already saw that there were a few during the conference. I'm really happy about that. So let's jump into the agenda. I'm going to talk about how performance affects or impacts the user experience in mobile. I'm going to introduce the differences between mobile and web apps briefly. And then I'm going to focus on the client-side performance, both on web and mobile, but specifically, I'm going to dig deeper on how to incorporate client-side performance tests for mobile apps early on in your development cycle. I'll talk about a few tools that you can use for this. And if we have time at the end, I would like to do a quick demo of the first product that we actually launched from Apptim, which is a product that you can download for free. And it's meant to be used during any type of testing that you're doing today. And we capture all the performance data on the client side on what's happening with your apps, on the devices you're testing, and giving this visibility to the mobile testing team. So we're really looking for feedback right now on this product. So I hope if it's interesting to you, what I show you today, you can then go and use it. As I said, it's free, and we're looking for feedback from users right now. Okay, so let's first talk why we should care about performance in mobile. Typically when we think about performance, even myself, my experience is thinking about, backend servers, how can we make sure that when we launch, we're gonna be able to handle the load we expect, and how to improve and optimize that part of our solution. But truly, there are many things that happen on the client that our users are using. It's either a browser or an actual native app that is running on their devices that also has an impact on the experience. I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. And this is very important because this is the first time in history that the number of mobile users is greater than the number of desktop users. And this is data that was collected this year by Statista. And it shows that 54% of current users are actually accessing from either a mobile or a tablet device, which is bigger than desktop. So this is really why we should think about what experience are we giving to our mobile users, and it is more important than ever before. And the truth is that mobile web performance has a huge impact on the UX, specifically because of a few things that I list here. Slow pages are the #1 issue that mobile users complain about. So this is even higher than the crashes that your site might have. It's how fast or how slow it actually loads, and what the user experience is. And this is the biggest complaint today. Then also we have to take into consideration that most of the mobile users actually expect that their experience on mobile and fast page will load, it's either the same or faster than the experience we're giving them today on their desktops. And this is usually below 4 milliseconds. So even the expectations for mobile are higher. So we need to take this into consideration when we think about how to improve the user experience, and from a performance testing approach, what are the specific things that we need to take care when we want to improve this for our mobile users. And also typically, when we think about the differences between a website and a mobile native app, usually the mobile native apps can actually have a better performance in terms of, there's no JavaScript code that you need to load, and it might be faster than websites, and that is why many people will choose to give a chance to a native app instead of having the mobile-friendly website. And this actually takes me to the next question, which we get asked a lot. Should you build a mobile native app instead of having a mobile website if you really want to give the best experience to your user? And here I put some numbers. Actually, this is from this year, which is very special, of course, for everyone because of COVID-19. But this is a recent report from Sensor Tower that showed that consumer spending on mobile apps during the first half of 2020 actually increased 21% than from last year, reaching almost $50 billion worldwide across both the App Store and the Google Play Store. And we can think, this growth was probably driven by COVID-19. It impacted user behavior. More people are actually buying and getting using digital services from their homes more than before. But this is actually how this growth has been seen in the past years as well. The same report also estimates that around 71.5 billion first-time app installs happened during the same period. So this means that users are actually installing new apps for the first time. Sometimes we think that we already have a lot of apps in our phones. It's really hard to get a new app out in the market and have users install it. But this actually gives a great incentive for businesses that are thinking to developing a mobile app and give their service through that app, that users are actually increasingly installing new apps for the first time. So does this mean that we should choose to develop mobile apps? I will say that the right choice actually depends on the business objectives. So if your goal as a business is to offer, mobile-friendly content to a wide range of people, I will probably say that the mobile website is the best way to go, because you actually have, you can reach more people, and you also have some benefits that I'm going to talk about soon. But then, on the other hand, if you want to have better ways of engaging, interacting, or even communicating with your customers, many times to drive customer loyalty, you can actually make use of a lot of the features that come with the mobile native apps. I will say that that would be a better option in that case. It really depends on what are your goals, what's your business, the decision between doing or developing a native app or going with a mobile-friendly website. And just to mention a few of the benefits of mobile websites, it is accessible for everyone. You just need to go to URL and can access from any phone anywhere in the world. You don't need to be updating your app. You just update your, the website, the service, and then it will be updated for everyone. And usually it is more cost effective than developing a native app. And also you have to take into consideration that we have both Android and iOS users, mostly everywhere in the world. So it is a more cost-effective option. And on the other hand, when you think about mobile apps, what are the benefits? Well, you have more interactive ways to engage to your users. You can, it provides actually a better personalization. You have notifications that you can send them. You can track how they interact with your app and give a better experience. You can use the gestures. You can use mobile features such as the camera, access contents list. You can use a GPS. You can make phone calls even if you need. It has a lot of advantages. It also works offline in case, some of your users might be in areas that are not connected all the time and don't have a good connection. And as well, as I mentioned, it usually will, if it's well implemented, that's what we hope, it should work faster than actually having the mobile website version. So these are some of the benefits of mobile native apps and why you should take this into consideration when you are deciding between both. And also there are new technologies to consider. So I don't want you to only think, and these are not the only like black or white options. There are new options in the market today that I think some of them bring the best of both worlds. I'm just gonna mention briefly two of them. The first one is the AMP project, which is actually an open source initiative. I think originally developed by Google and Twitter. In its infancy, it was called Accelerated Mobile Pages. Maybe you're familiar with that name. And one of the project's goals was to just help create optimized mobile web pages. So they were actually trying to improve that experience on mobile websites. Then we have, and more recently, we have PWA, which are progressive web apps, which are also very known today and spoke about in web performance mostly. That they are just, I will say they're web applications, but they're built and enhanced with APIs. So you're able to deliver the native-like capabilities. So you can be more reliable, you can actually install it as well and reach everyone, anywhere, and you only have a single code base. So it actually brings the best of both worlds, so being able to provide those native-like capabilities that a mobile app has, but still being a web application with the benefits that it has. I recommend you to check them out if you're interested in knowing more what these new technologies brings and how they actually improve the performance on mobile. Okay, so now let's talk about what to measure and how to measure performance on the client side, which is main topic of today. Is how can we improve the user experience in mobile by looking at this part of the equation. So the main thing when it comes to measuring performance in mobile and web applications is that there are actually striking differences between the two, and they're mainly related to how they are built. So I'm gonna go quickly over this, but mobile web applications, they depend on the underlying framework that it's usually provided by the operating system, Android, iOS today. And then on the other hand, the web applications, they have similar functionality to a desktop app. They have a client server architecture where the client, which includes the user interface and the client-side logic, runs in a web browser. So due to these differences is that mobile and web applications have different metrics that we can measure and monitor, and that they will provide us with the holistic view that we need how our apps are performing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some examples of things that we can measure on the client side, thinking about performance on a web app. So we have to take into consideration that in mobile devices, the client-side processing is constrained to the resources of the device where it's running, and mobile devices have slower CPUs than PCs or Macs, and usually they have less memory. So we have to think of where the content is going to be shown, and what are the resources that we have available for our web mobile website, and how to improve that, or how to optimize our website for those users. So a few of the things that we can measure, of course, the image sizes, any caching policies that we have, how much time it takes for JavaScripts to be parsed, and if there's any improvements that we can do there in terms of how we load the content, the rendering of the below the fold content, and many more things that will give us a better experience for those users that are either running on high-end devices or even low-end devices that in many markets today are actually starting to get into the internet. So it's good to take this into consideration when we think about what are the optimizations that we can do on our mobile website, thinking about those users, having them in mind. Then if we think about the native apps, and specifically Android, everyone knows that Android has a huge fragmentation problem, meaning the amount of different devices and different operating systems in the market it's growing every year, and it's bigger than iOS. And to show you how this has changed in the last years, this is a graph since 2013. So in the last 7 years, all the Android versions that have been released, Android operating system versions that have been released over the years, which resulted today in this high fragmentation. So in order to test, or in order to cover 70% of the Android market, if we think about 7 years ago, we just only needed to test on around 3 versions of the Android OS. So we just need 3 devices with 3 different versions of the OS and see how our app behaves. Today, if we want to have the same coverage, so we want to keep that 70% coverage, we need to test in at least 6 different devices, going from Android 5 all the way up to Pi 9. And even now we have Android 10, and we have a new Android coming out this year. So this actually requires more testing. This needs more focus on performance and app behavior. It changes a lot from one version to the others. Android has a different way of rendering things or how activities work, and all this actually affects the user experience. So you have to make sure that, based on our customers, where they are located and what's the most common devices they're using on operating systems. So we have this coverage in our test, and thinking about what are the metrics that we care about in mobile native apps. I have a few examples here of things that we can measure. One is all the related to the device resource usage. So this is, the CPU that is being used by our app in the device, the memory, of course, the battery, so the power consumption. Users will get really mad if we use a lot of battery. We drain the battery, and the phone will heat up probably. And then all the data that is being sent and received from the app, and things that will make us understand if there is some issue on the user experience, what's happening below, and now how we are actually using resources, how our app is resources, that all this is being shared with all the other apps that are running in the same device. So you have to take that into consideration. These are not dedicated resources that we have, and there are constraints that we need to test, and we need to understand how our app performs. Then we have the rendering, so the drawing times on the screen. So we can measure rendering times. We can measure frames per second. And this will give us an idea if there's any disruption in animations, any screen that is freeze. That's how the user will experience it, and things like that. Then we have, of course, any error that happens. Could be a crash. The app crashes and closes. It could be an ANR, which is application not responding in Android, which usually happens when the user sees in the screen, it sees a message saying like, wait for the app to respond or you can close it. And that's because there hasn't been a response in 5 seconds or less after an input from the user. And then, which is really interesting in these last years, is how to measure response time from the user perspective. And this could be response times from a specific transaction that happens in your app. For example, a login. How much time does the login take to actually being executed? And one important metric that many developers care about is the app startup time. So how much time does it take for my app to start and let the user interact with it after I open it? Could be the first time, could be after the app is running in the back. So you can measure these specific events and see how you are doing today and how you can improve. Generally speaking, app startups time should be less than 3 seconds. That's what the user expects. So you have to be able to understand like how you are today and if this is something that you should improve or at least optimize in the future if you see a degradation of performance. So what tools can we use to test client-side performance in mobile? So if we talk about web apps, and as I mentioned before, there are different metrics that we care depending on the technology and how apps are built. So we're talking about web. Google actually has a lot of tools in the web dev tools. Specifically, Lighthouse is the one that most of the tools, and it shows you things like how fast the web page loads in mobile. You can gather tips to optimize things like how to load the JavaScript resources that I mentioned before, cache policies, and more. It's very powerful tool. So you can take a look at that if you have a website that it's actually loading on mobile as well. And then, of course, you have all the APMs, application performance management tools, that they also give you tips to optimize this for your website. Then on the native side, there are a lot of profiling tools. There are 2 mainly profiling tools which are native to each platform. So you have Android Studio that you can have its profiler for your app. And then you have, for iOS, you have Instruments, part of Xcode, which is the IDE. And these are of great help when debugging an app and looking for the root. And then, we at Apptim actually develop a tool that is aimed at helping mobile testers, performance engineers, and even developers as well to capture all this performance data in a way that is not invasive. You don't need an SDK to use us. You don't need to have access to the code of your app. And we analyze everything that is happening while you're actually using the app. Then we generate a report with metrics, so the team and the testers can actually understand how the app is behaving and have actionable metrics to see if there's anything that they can improve. And that's what I want to do in a quick 5 minutes demo that I still have left. I'm gonna change my screen, and you should be seeing now that I have on the right side of my screen, I have actually the Apptim app, which is a desktop app in this case. We have other versions for test automation, but this is the easiest, I will say, to get started with. And you have one for Mac and one for Windows. Download it later if you want to try it out. And basically the way it works is pretty simple. You need to have your phone connected to your Mac or your Windows PC. In this case, I have 2 devices. I have an Android device, and then I have an iPhone. I'm just going to start a test on the Android device. I'm going to click on Start New Test, and Apptim will look for the devices that are connected. Here I can identify the 2 devices. I'm going to choose the Huawei, which is the Android device. And then I'm going to choose the app that I'm going to test. And I'm going to choose this one. Close, and I'm going to give the one that I'm going to run the test so you can see what's running. So I'm going to choose the device. These are all the apps installed. So I'm going to choose the app that I'm going to run the test on for the demo. Here I have two options. This bot test is actually coming. We are doing few improvements to an early version of the bot test. The main idea of this is that you don't need to run the test either manually or automated. You will have a way to have a bot exploring your app and finding performance issues and crashes. So right now I'm just going to do a manual exploratory test, put a name to it, which is demo. And right now Apptim is connected to the phone, and once it's ready, it's going to start the app that I choose automatically. And now I'm ready to start running my test, basically. So in this case, I'm going to do a quick flow. I have different options in this app. I can actually write a text. I can check this box. Different options here. You know, it's just a basic app with a lot of features. I can refresh. I have nested views. I can go up and down. And then I'm just going to quickly crash the app. So we can capture that. It close, and then it just end my session. So Apptim now captures everything. I also have other options for testers that want to report bugs or take notes. And then it just end my session. And now we're connecting the device, capturing the data that we were measuring, and we'll generate, I will say, a nice report that provides the right information for you to get started with, analyzing performance. We're trying to make it easy for anyone, even if you don't have a technical background. You're not maybe the developer of the app, so you might not know a lot about Android performance specifically. You want to make sure that you have at least a first glance at how your app is behaving, and then have that conversation with the developer or the performance engineer in the team that can help you understand how to dig deeper on something that was going on. So now we're waiting a few minutes. First, the report, actually we'll see it now. It's generated locally, so you can host it and have it in your own computer. If you then want to upload it to our cloud and share it from there and add other team members, you can do that as well. But initially, you don't need to upload it to any cloud. You can just host it in your own computer. So now the report is generated. I'm going to open it when it's done, and I'm going to quickly share with you a few of the insights that it found. I'm going to open this a bit more so we can all see. So this is the main, this is a summary, I'll say the main view of the report. So what we try to show here is, what's the current health, a health check of the health state of your app. Regarding performance, of course, so we show the average CPU usage, memory usage, power, the data that was sent and downloaded, and errors, the areas that I talked before. Then you can drill down on, the warnings that we show, and these warnings are based on thresholds put by industry, best practices, or of course, if there was, an actual crash, we show that there was a critical exception happening. And then you can actually see as well what the other metrics were performing, and you can explore more on this left side. We have info from the actual test, the device that we use, the OS version that was used. We have a nice video of all the tests, so it helps also understanding what happened, and then going back to the video to the exact time. And then all the graphs. So this helps when there's any issue here that the team sees that there might be something going on or something that wasn't expected in terms of response times or the resource usage. You can counter the graphs. In this case, it's a network graph, and see specifically at what time of the test that happened, and then try to get more information when you send it to the developers. We do that by looking at the graph, and also we have all the logs from the capture from the device. So we can come here and actually get logs from CPU network and analyze more what was going on. And as I mentioned, the crashes, if there's a crash, we capture that. We'll show when it happened as well. So, main idea is to make it easier for anyone to start testing performance, which is our main goal at Apptim. And this is a tool that you can download and use it. Right now it's free, so we want to have feedback from users. And last but not least, when should we start testing our performance? And I've been in performance for a long time, mostly on the back end. Since a few years ago, we've been more involved on mobile testing and specifically performance. And I would recommend everyone that they should start as soon as possible for many reasons, but mainly because this will help you, if you're the tester, if you're the performance engineer with the back-end background and this is completely new to you, you will start understanding more how your app behaves, familiarizing yourself with these metrics. The earlier you start testing, then you can actually compare and see how this change over time. Of course, for that, you need to have a dedicated environment, like testing always on the same device, for example. But this is something that will help you identify early on if there's a change in the app, how this affects the performance. And of course, the main goal is to prevent new performance issues from reaching the end user. And that's what we are trying to do by helping our current users with Apptim. Yeah, that's all I had for you today. I hope it was interesting. And please let me know if there are any questions. Happy to answer them.
All right, thank you, Sofia. Let me enable the webcams and mics from the other pack members connected. So I see that Martin is connected. I'm going to enable his webcam. Mark is obviously here, and also Scott is there. I'm going to enable. So I don't know if Scott is. Joey is connected. I don't know if he's sleeping or he's really there. So I'm going to maybe enable, but if he's not there.
I'm here, Henrik.
Awesome. And Alejandro, the senior performer, is there as well. All right, so let me jump in. So first of all, I have a couple of questions. I will leave the space for the other members to ask their own questions. So I was specifically interested in the monitoring metrics that we're providing. The problem with the mobile is when we measure CPU, you don't know if it's the usage or the metrics that we've collected comes from my app, or if suddenly, I don't know, I have left Facebook open in the background, or I have WhatsApp, whatever, which is in the background. So I don't know if the usage is related to my app or it's related to the other apps. Usually, so I was wondering if you had more insights on how the app behaves specifically, or is it general on the phone? So that was something I was interested in understanding.
Yeah, that's a great question, which comes frequently. So the answer, it depends on the metric, how you are able to assure that what you're seeing is only from your app. So let me explain that. When we talk about CPU or even the battery that we're using or memory, we can actually filter without having any like test or debug app. We can capture that. So what you're seeing right now with Apptim, you will see it from your app. When we think about network, for instance, in iOS specifically, you need to use Apptim with a debug version of your app. So you can actually, there's a flag that you put that you only want to capture the network, so the data that is being sent and received from your specific app. If not, it will capture everything. So it depends a bit of the metrics, how you can manage that. But in most of the cases, if you are not, I would say, if you're not familiar with it, most of the metrics will show the ones from your app. Network is the one that I know that comes to mind, that we actually provide that option of using it with your debug version of your app. So you're sure that you're capturing all the traffic that comes and leaves the phone, but only from your app. And actual power usage, I can get a lot of into details. It's a bit different how you capture that in Android and iOS. That's basically because of how we capture this data. For Android, we use ADB and basically instrumentation tools for Android. And the way we came up with an algorithm to understand how you're consuming the power, the battery of the phone comes from the fact that we measure how much you are using of CPU, network, and GPU, and those are the things that affect more the battery usage. So I can, that would be the short answer for Android. For iOS, we use actually instruments from Xcode to get some of the metrics. So this is given by Apple Instruments itself. And in that case, there's not much that we can analyze on if they're properly capturing specifically the power usage, which is something that we care about a lot. We just rely on what Apple provides today as information for your app, and that's what we show on Apptim.
Got it. And one thing that I wanted to ask as well is, so now you are showing mainly like a unit performance testing approach, where you run a test case on a single user test on your phone. You collect data and you can analyze from there. Do you have first of all, do you have a support, for example, to say, okay, now I have this unit performance testing profile that I made. Can I translate it into automation so then I can use it to, I don't know, make some regression testing out of that, and then combine it with load and then collect metrics when I apply load to say, do I have the same behavior when I start to have millions and thousands of users, or is it mainly you're focusing mainly on the unit performance level?
Yeah, that's another good question. And we started focusing only on unit, but we already had a lot of feedback, and actually people wanted to see the same type of information on your regression tests. And usually this happens. You have a functional testing team that is running a bunch of automated tests at UI level, and we figure out that actually we could reuse those tests, just run them for like performance regression testing. So in this case, we actually support some open source frameworks such as Apptim for mobile. So you can have your automated test running with Apptim and capturing performance data. So you can see if there's any difference from one run to the other, and captures those regressions. So you don't have to do it like manually unit type of test. And of course, it has to run. In many cases, you will run it on a cloud, on a cloud provider that has mobile devices. So you want to make sure that at least you have that coverage on your regression. So we also provide that recently. And on your last question, it is an interesting use case. We are still kind of like thinking what's the best way to present it to our customers, so they actually understand like where should you focus on backend, when should you focus on front end, and when does it make sense past the end-to-end experience. As you mentioned, we are only focusing with Apptim on the front end, but what happens when you're loading your backend with the real user experience? Is it affected? Is it something that doesn't make sense in a way to have a test that has both integrated at the same time? We did a few proof of concepts with one of the performance testing vendors in the market, where we integrated. We had an easy way to integrate Apptim to be testing, in real devices, an app capturing this performance data while you are able to simulate load in your backend. Compare that with no load. See what happens. And there are some improvements that we saw that actually make sense to see that on the front end. But we are still kind of like figuring out how to introduce it to customers, because we don't want to give the wrong idea that many of the issues that we identify are also on the back end, and that's not something that you need to use Apptim for. We don't do load test. So sometimes it's better to start like which each part separately, that's how I say it, like, you need, then you go up the pyramid. So first, like, optimize or test your backend, isolate it, and then maybe at the end you want to do a more, fancy test when you can include both your backend, your front-end performance, and even you have like different tools to simulate networks, so you can check also how that affects the user experience as well, simulating latencies and different bandwidths.
Yeah, because I was thinking maybe you have a sort of Apptim grid for Selenium.
Yeah, exactly. We don't host it. We actually integrate with one of the current cloud providers in the space. But yeah, we basically found a way to easily, write a test on a YAML file using Apptim and then triggering those tests in a cloud when you can choose which devices you want to run your test. You can send, have your test automated already. You can push that to the same cloud, and then Apptim will be recording everything that's happening. And then in that same test, you can actually add an integration with a load testing provider in case you want to schedule the same test to happen. So you can actually test for that user experience while you're loading the backend. And you can get even more fancy, as I said, like, you want to run from each device, you want to have different types of networks, so you can simulate that. That's also an option that we are seeing, and I think a lot of people are interested because it's not that, I think it's not that cheap if you have a lot of users in different countries to actually test with real networks and real devices, and we're trying to provide a more cost-effective solution by focusing mostly on the client-side performance, and then what things can vary in the environment that might affect that, which can be the network, which can be different devices with low memories, low RAM, could be low battery scenarios and things like that.
Okay. Great, thanks. So while I'm looking at the Q&A section from the audience, do you have any questions, Martin or Joey or Sofia?
Oh, hi, can you guys hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay, cool. Yep. That's excellent. It'll be a lot easier when I have to present. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think I feel like all very, very similar issues. I mean, I'm a heavy user of instruments and like Android Studio and all the other things that kind of get away. I ended up building a lot of the tools we have like internally to solve like similar issues. One question I have, like, find it really cool that you can kind of have both together at the same place. How in depth can you get into those applications? Like, can you get into tracing, like some sort of sampling CPU? I know you can do that with those platforms. You guys have that available, or is like a direction you plan on going?
Yeah, we are planning. So right now, what we're actually telling we're working with is you will complement Apptim, which is the first glance with the profiling tools or tracing tools that you have today. What we're going after right now is not specifically replacing those tools, but mostly how can we show for specific transaction everything that happened during that transaction. So you can actually see the waterfall graph that you actually get today for websites in many tools, in performance tools, but for a mobile app. And that's something that it is a bit challenging when you find that there's something that, a response time that is high, or understanding where is the problem. Is it the API call? Is it something on the network, or is it actually something on the client side? But because we measure on the client side only, right now we're providing their first glance at what's happening, or what's the situation, and then trying to help understand how to narrow down the problem to the part of the whole system that is happening. That's what we're working on as a next step.
Cool.
Joey, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I totally love it, actually. I really like Apptim. Really like how it looked. Graphically, it looks really awesome. Also a lot of potential in there. Like you said yourself, Henrik, in a Selenium farm where I can pick which device I want and then run automated load tests all over them, and then just pull all the information with Apptim, what battery usage they have, how much data they send, and then just combine all of that and then create reports out of that is awesome. Because then I can actually see exactly how much battery is used over average over these types of devices, and that's actually really interesting information. I can actually imagine that you can get a lot of angles in that if you use it in combination as with load testing, but also just for like on unit level, just checking out on the front end how stuff is working. It's awesome, really cool. Looks really cool.
And then
Thanks, yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I think we have so many use cases that people came up, and just as being a startup, we try to do everything, but again, as well, we have to focus on one thing. But I do think there's a huge opportunity to add more performance insights to the current functional testing that is happening in all these device farms, and a lot of information that is barely, measure or capture today. And if we can actually provide a solution that plugs into your current test and can bring the team this information early on, so they have it available, we have done already a lot, and that's our goal.
Because you were.
Yeah, go ahead, Roger. I was going to add some. I thought you were going to ask one question, so that's why I'm going to add it because you didn't ask it. Go ahead, ask your question. I have one question left.
Okay, you were mentioning that you had to plug in your Galaxy and your iPhone, or your Huawei and your iPhone, to be able to connect with Apptim. But is it also possible to just virtualize it? Because I know you can virtualize Android or iOS and just mock it, instead of actually physically plugging in an actual device?
But like virtualizing, you mean like having an emulator for Android?
Yeah, an actual emulator instead of a real one.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, of course, like we do support emulators, but when it comes to measuring the performance of your app on a real device using real hardware, I wouldn't recommend testing.
Yeah, of course.
On emulators, for functional testing, I think it's fine, but yeah, it's just the hardware. It's emulated. It's completely different than the real devices that users have. So that's why we don't suggest running real tests on emulators. Just for demos, sometimes I use them, but truly the data that you will gather is not that useful.
I understand.
My question would be related to the different topics we had this, I don't know, afternoon or I don't remember because the day has been a bit long now. So is there a way to get the data out of Apptim? So let's say I want to throw it back to like a time series database, and then I want to correlate with various events that I have collected in my environment. Because, for example, if I start implementing the approach where I'm going to trigger several tests from various devices, and then I want to basically digest all the data and then push it somewhere so someone can analyze directly there. Do you have the ability to export it?
Yeah, not out of the box today. If you use the version that I just showed, which is a desktop version, you actually have all the raw files posted in your computer. So we use that to generate the report. So some of our users actually get that raw data, then they export it or they import it actually to like spreadsheet or any other tool that they have. Today we don't have like an option to click here and export the CV in other format, but it is something that if we have we have it available. It's just a matter of having it.
Okay. So basically, once you have because I guess you will go through like a sort of a cloud-based or a server-based Apptim solution, more where you can basically.
Yeah, exactly. We started with one cloud provider today. Our plan is to expand to all the others that exist. SaaS Labs. We actually started already talking with them early. But yeah, the idea is that we will be cloud agnostic. You can run Apptim, and then in that case, yeah, we need to provide a way to export the raw data. But because today we did our first integration with the cloud provider, we are not yet giving it as something that you can automatically export it. You need to basically ask us, or if you use the desktop, you have it already in your computer.
Got it. All right, thanks. So I looked at the few questions from the audience, and there was a similar question that I asked related to the metrics, how you were calculating those metrics. So I think we covered most of the questions that were asked by the audience. Martin, do you have one question left, or?
No. Yeah. So I'm assuming you guys going for a full headless version too. I guess you showed us the desktop version, but a headless version too. Yeah, add on automation and have that. Cool. Yeah. Our case, we don't use any of the cloud providers, but we have our own like large, fairly big farm of devices out there to capture things.
Yeah, that we plan that as well.
Cool.
All right, thank you so much, Sofia, for your presentation. Thanks for sharing the tool. I think the feedback from the audience and from what we've seen, there's a great potential, and I'm pretty excited. I have to play with it, guys.
Yeah, that's my invitation, and thank you for your questions as well, and for the audience that have stood through this almost an hour. And yeah, my invitation is that one. Just play around, let us know what you think. What are your current challenges around performance? We focus on client side and mobile because that's where we saw that, some teams do have the capabilities today and the people to capture all this data, but most of the teams, they don't. So we want to provide an easier way to do that. And, this is our first product launch a couple of months ago. So we're hoping to also evolve this into that can be, plugged into your current automation or being used in your current processes. So thanks all for having me, and my pleasure to be part of this session.
Great, thank you.